The stars themselves seemed tired of the war. For over 500 years, the vast armies of the Vec and the Tauran had battled across the galaxy, turning once beautiful planets into barren wastelands. Both sides were locked in a deadly dance that neither could win, yet neither would end. The Vec, with their sleek silver ships and blue energy weapons, controlled the outer rim systems. They were tall beings with pale skin that glowed faintly in the dark. Their society valued order above all else. The Tauran ruled the inner core worlds with their red and gold vessels. Shorter and stockier than the Vec, they had tough, scaled skin in various earth tones. They prized strength and honor, building massive monuments to their war heroes. Between them lay the neutral zone, a graveyard of destroyed ships and dead worlds. Once these planets had been home to dozens of peaceful species. Now they were just another battlefield. Commander Dorn of the Vec Defense Fleet stared at the tactical display. Another day, another battle, another stalemate. His ship, the Unwavering Justice had faced the enemy flagship Honors Blade 17 times. Each encounter ended the same way, with both ships limping back to their territories, crews decimated but pride intact. Status report, Dorn ordered, his voice betraying no emotion despite the fresh burns on his left arm. 6 ships lost, Commander. The Tauran lost 7. We've pushed their forces back to the Keldor system, his second-in-command replied. Dorn nodded slightly. A pointless victory. They'll return with reinforcements within days. Across the galaxy, Admiral Thol of the Tauran Imperial Fleet slammed his fist against the command console of the Honors Blade *. Unlike his counterpart, he made no attempt to hide his frustration. Those cowards retreated rather than face defeat. Ready the second battle group. We attack at dawn, he growled. His officers bowed in unison, though one dared to speak. Admiral, the Council has requested our presence at the peace talks on Station Epsilon. Thol laughed bitterly. Peace talks. A waste of time. But we will go. The Vec will show their true colors there, as they always do. Station Epsilon hung in space exactly halfway between Vec and Tauran territories. Once a trading hub, it now served only as neutral ground for the endless, pointless negotiations between the two powers. Representatives from a dozen other species waited in the Grand Hall, hopeful yet realistic about the prospects for peace. Among them stood Jack Reed, the only human present. At 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and graying hair, he didn't look particularly remarkable next to the exotic aliens surrounding him. What set him apart was his expression, not bored or resigned like the others, but intensely focused. They've been fighting since before humans discovered electricity, remarked a tentacled diplomat beside Jack. What makes the Galactic Council think this time will be different? Jack didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the doors as they slid open to admit the delegations. The Vec and Tauran representatives entered from opposite sides, each group careful to maintain exactly the same number of steps, the same number of guards, the same level of apparent dignity. The familiar ritual began. Accusations of ancient crimes, demands for reparations, territorial disputes over worlds whose original inhabitants had died out centuries ago. Jack listened carefully, making notes in a small tablet. While others dozed or checked communications, he didn't miss a single word. The breaking point came 6 hours in, when the Tauran ambassador mentioned the Battle of Den of 4. Your unprovoked attack on our scientific outpost, he began. Scientific? It was a weapons facility, interrupted the Vec diplomat. Within moments, both delegations were on their feet. Guards reached for weapons. The other diplomats scattered. Jack watched as centuries of hatred reduced supposedly advanced civilizations to the brink of violence. He wasn't surprised when both delegations stormed out, promising renewed warfare. Same result as the last 67 peace conferences, sighed the station administrator. But unlike everyone else in the room, Jack Reed was smiling slightly. He had seen something in the heated exchange, a pattern, a clue, perhaps even a solution. I need access to the historical archives, he told the administrator. All of them. The war that had raged for 5 centuries wasn't going to end through traditional diplomacy. But Jack Reed had a different approach in mind. Jack Reed sat alone in the dimly lit archives of Station Epsilon, surrounded by holographic displays showing battle reports, peace treaties, and diplomatic messages dating back centuries. For 3 days straight, he had barely eaten or slept, consumed by his research. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage. Earth had achieved faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago, and many older species still viewed them as primitive curiosities. The Galactic Council had sent Jack as an observer to the peace talks precisely because humans were seen as harmless. They had no stake in the ancient conflict. Your species has a fresh perspective, the council representative had told him. Just watch and learn. But Jack was more than just a diplomat. Before joining the Earth Diplomatic Corps, he had been a military strategist with a reputation for solving impossible conflicts. He had ended the resource wars on Earth by finding the hidden connections no one else saw. Now, as he studied the data, patterns emerged that made his heart race. Computer, show me the first recorded battle between the Vec and Toran, Jack commanded. The display shifted to show an ancient star chart. 2 fleets meeting near a strange anomaly in space. Now overlay the locations of all major battles in the first century of the war. Hundreds of dots appeared, forming a spiral pattern moving outward from that first encounter. Interesting, Jack muttered. Now show me the major battles from the last century. New dots appeared, forming an almost identical pattern, but moving inward, back toward the origin point. Jack stood up, his tired eyes wide with realization. They're fighting their way back to where it all started, and they don't even know it. The next morning, Jack called an emergency meeting with the station administrator, a gentle 4-armed alien named Pax. I need to speak with both fleet commanders, Jack said without preamble. Pax laughed, a bubbling sound like water over rocks. Impossible. Commander Dorn and Admiral Thull haven't been in the same room in 80 years. The last time they met, 3 security guards died. Then I'll speak to them separately, Jack insisted. This is important. Why would they listen to you? Humans are barely known in this part of the galaxy. Jack smiled. Because I know something about their war that even they don't understand. Pax studied the human for a long moment. You're serious. Deadly serious. Millions more will die if this continues. 2 hours later, Jack found himself aboard a shuttle heading toward the Vec command ship. Getting Commander Dorn to agree to a meeting had taken all of Pax's diplomatic skills, and a hint that the human might have intelligence about Toran fleet movements. The shuttle docked with the massive Vec vessel. Jack was escorted by stern guards to the command deck, where Commander Dorn waited, his pale skin glowing faintly in the ship's blue lighting. Human, Dorn said, not bothering with a formal greeting. You claim to have information for me. Jack nodded, stepping forward confidently. I do, but it's not what you expect. He activated his tablet, projecting a holographic display between them. This is the pattern of your war, a perfect spiral spanning 500 years. You're fighting your way back to the beginning. Dorn's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Explain. Your people and the Toran weren't always enemies. Something happened at this location. Jack pointed to the center of the spiral. Something both sides have been trying to return to, perhaps unconsciously, for centuries. Nonsense, Dorn said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Toran have always been our enemies. Have they? Your own oldest records suggest otherwise. I found references in your archives to a joint project between your peoples, something called the Nexus Shield. For the first time, the commander showed emotion, shock, quickly masked. Those records are classified. How did you? I'm good at finding patterns, Jack said simply, and I believe I can end this war, if you'll let me try. Dorn stared at the human for a long moment. What exactly are you proposing? Jack took a deep breath. I need a ship. and a crew willing to go somewhere neither the Vec nor the Tauren have dared to go in 5 centuries. This is madness, growled Tora, a Tauren weapons specialist with battle scars crisscrossing her scaled face. Working with Vec. I'd rather eat poison. Jack Reed stood in the center of a small conference room aboard Station Epsilon. Around him sat the most unlikely crew ever assembled. 3 Vec, 3 Tauren, and 2 neutral species who had agreed to join his mission. None of them looked happy to be there. Your peoples have been killing each other for 5 centuries, Jack said calmly. How's that working out? No one answered. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the station's systems. Commander Dorn has provided us with a scout ship, Jack continued. Admiral Thull has contributed advanced scanning equipment. Neither knows the other is involved, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. Ren, a tall Vec engineer, stood up. Why should we trust you, human? Your species is barely space capable. Jack smiled. That's exactly why you should trust me. I have no stake in your war. I just want to stop the bloodshed. He activated a holographic display showing the spiral pattern of the war. Something happened here, at the center, that started everything. The historical records from both sides mention the Nexus Shield, a joint project that somehow went wrong. I believe if we find it, we can end this conflict. Mara, a neutral species observer with translucent skin, spoke up. The center of that spiral is in the dead zone. No ships return from there. No military ships, Jack corrected, because both sides attack anything that enters, but we'll have codes from both fleets, and our ship will be disguised as a research vessel from outside the conflict. The room erupted in arguments. Jack let them vent their frustrations, watching as centuries of hatred and fear poured out. When they finally quieted, he spoke again. Each of you has lost family to this war. Each of you has questioned why it continues. This is your chance to find answers. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to nod. 3 days later, their ship, renamed Seeker *, departed from Station Epsilon. Jack had told his superiors he was taking a leave of absence for personal reasons. The Earth Diplomatic Corps wouldn't approve of his unauthorized mission, but he couldn't stand by and watch more worlds burn. The crew worked in tense shifts, Vec and Tauren avoiding each other when possible. Jack spent hours with each member, learning their stories, building trust. Slowly, barriers began to break down. On the 5th day, as they approached the border of contested space, Ren and Tora found themselves working together to calibrate the sensor array. After an awkward silence, Tora spoke. My grandfather used to tell stories about the time before the war. He said our peoples once built wonders together. Ren looked surprised. Our histories say the same. What happened to change that? The great betrayal, Tora said automatically, then paused. At least, that's what we're taught. We're taught the same, Ren replied quietly, but with your people as the betrayers. They looked at each other, really looked, perhaps for the first time. Jack watched from the doorway, hope rising in his chest. This was why he believed his plan could work. When people stepped outside the stories they'd been told all their lives, they could begin to see the truth. That night, as the rest of the crew slept, Jack reviewed the ancient texts he had downloaded from both civilizations' archives. The references were vague, coded in old languages, but they spoke of a weapon designed to protect the galaxy from some great threat. The Nexus Shield, created jointly by the greatest minds of both species. An alarm blared, jerking Jack from his research. The ship rocked violently. Battle cruiser approaching. Mara called from the bridge. Tauren markings. Jack rushed to the command deck. On the view screen, a massive Tauren warship loomed. They're hailing us, said Bryn, their communications officer. Open the channel, Jack ordered. Admiral Thull's face filled the screen, his expression thunderous. Human, he growled. You have Vec aboard your vessel. Explain yourself before I blast you into atoms. Jack's impossible plan had just become much more complicated. Jack Reed stood tall on the bridge of the Seeker Asterisk, facing Admiral Tholl's furious image on the view screen. The human's mind raced, calculating options, weighing risks. "Admiral," Jack said calmly, "I invited both Vec and Tauren specialists on this mission because what we're investigating concerns both your peoples." Tholl's eyes narrowed. "You dare to make decisions about our war? A primitive from a backwater world?" Jack smiled slightly. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to see the full picture. Request permission to come aboard and explain in private." After a tense silence, Tholl nodded curtly. "Granted, but only you, human. Any Vec who sets foot on my ship will be executed." The transmission ended. The bridge crew turned to Jack with worried expressions. "You can't go," said Tora. "It's a trap." "If I don't go, we're all dead," Jack replied simply. "Ren, you're in command until I return. If I'm not back in 3 hours, continue the mission without me." The Vec engineer looked startled. "You would trust me to command?" "I trust all of you," Jack said, looking around at the mixed crew. "That's the point of this mission." Admiral Tholl's private chamber was decorated with trophies from countless battles, fragments of Vec ships, weapons, even a preserved hand from a high-ranking officer. Jack kept his expression neutral as he was led inside. "Explain yourself quickly," Tholl growled, dismissing his guards. Jack activated his tablet, showing the spiral pattern. "Your war has been following a specific path for 5 centuries, Admiral. Both sides are fighting to return to where it all began, the location of the Nexus Shield project." Tholl frowned deeply. "How do you know that name?" "I found references in both Vec and Tauren historical archives. Your peoples once worked together on something important, something designed to protect the galaxy." "Lies." Tholl spat, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Vec have always been our enemies." "Have they?" Jack pulled up ancient images showing Vec and Tauren working side by side. "These records tell a different story." Tholl stared at the images, his expression troubled. "These could be forgeries." "They're not, and I think you know it." Jack leaned forward. "Admiral, something happened 5 centuries ago that turned allies into enemies. Don't you want to know what it was?" Before Tholl could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. A young officer burst into the room. "Admiral, Vec fleet approaching. Battle formations." Tholl cursed. "They followed you." "No," Jack said firmly. "This is exactly what I was trying to prevent." The next few hours passed in chaos. Jack was thrown into a holding cell as the Tauren warship engaged the Vec fleet. Through the small viewport in his cell, he watched energy beams slice through the darkness of space. The Seeker Asterisk was caught in the crossfire, taking heavy damage. Jack felt helpless, trapped as his plan unraveled around him. Then, something unexpected happened. The Seeker Asterisk, despite its damaged state, positioned itself between the warring ships and broadcast a message on all frequencies. It was Ren and Tora, speaking together, their voices unified in a way that hadn't been heard in centuries. "Stop this madness. We have discovered something you all need to see." Miraculously, the firing paused. In that brief window, the Seeker Asterisk transmitted data to both fleets, ancient records that Jack had uncovered, showing the true purpose of the Nexus Shield. During the ceasefire, a small shuttle from the Seeker Asterisk docked with Admiral Tholl's ship. Ren, in a show of incredible courage, came aboard to free Jack. "You were right," the Vec engineer said as they raced back to the shuttle. "When we stopped fighting long enough to talk, we found more information in our combined databases." "What did you find?" Jack asked, breathless from their sprint. "Coordinates, the exact location of the Nexus Shield Control Center." Ren's eyes shone with excitement. "And it's still active, Jack, after all these centuries." As they returned to the damaged Seeker Asterisk, Jack looked out at the paused battle. It was only a temporary reprieve. Soon, the killing would continue unless they could reach the control center. Set course for those coordinates, Jack ordered as he stepped onto the bridge. We have one chance to end this war. The Seeker limped away from the battlefield, heading toward an uncharted region, at the center of the spiral, the place where everything had begun, and where Jack hoped it would finally end. The Seeker drifted through the swirling gases of a nebula, its engines struggling after the battle damage. On the bridge, Jack Reed and his mixed crew stared at the massive structure that loomed before them. "It's beautiful," whispered Mara, her translucent skin reflecting the soft lights of the control panel. The structure hung in space like a forgotten temple, a ring of gleaming metal surrounding a sphere of pulsing energy. Despite being over 5 centuries old, it showed no signs of decay. "The Nexus Shield Control Station," said Wren, checking the ancient star charts. Exactly where the coordinates indicated. Jack studied the readouts. No power signatures, no defense systems. "It appears to be dormant. Or waiting," added Tora, her hand resting instinctively on her weapon. As they approached, the Seeker's systems began to flicker. Strange symbols appeared on their screens, then vanished. "Something's scanning us," Bryn reported from the communications console. A soft hum filled the ship. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot from the station, enveloping the Seeker in a golden glow. "We're being pulled in," shouted the pilot, struggling with the controls. Jack remained calm. "Don't resist. This is what we came for." The Seeker was drawn toward a docking bay that opened like a mouth in the side of the station. With a gentle thud, they landed inside a vast chamber. Through the viewports, they could see that the chamber was lined with thousands of similar docking bays, most empty, some containing the remains of ancient ships. A fleet was based here, Jack observed, a combined fleet of Vec and Tauran vessels. The crew prepared to disembark, checking their environment suits and weapons. "We stay together," Jack instructed. "No one touches anything without my approval." As they stepped onto the station, gravity embraced them. Perfect Earth standard gravity, which was comfortable for both Vec and Tauran. The air was breathable, if stale. Lights flickered on ahead of them, guiding their way deeper into the station. "It's like it knows we're here," said Tora, looking around uneasily. Jack nodded. "I think it does." They followed the path of lights to a massive central chamber. The room was circular, with a raised platform in the center. Around the walls were control panels covered in dust, screens dark after centuries of disuse. Jack approached the central platform. As he did, a holographic projection flickered to life. 2 figures, a Vec and a Tauran, standing side by side. "Greetings, Guardians," the figures spoke in unison, their voices echoing strangely. "Welcome to the Nexus Shield Control Station." The crew froze in shock. "We are not Guardians," Jack replied carefully. "We are explorers, seeking to understand what happened here." The holographic figures tilted their heads in identical gestures of confusion. "Error. Protocol requires Guardians from both Vec and Tauran to be present for activation." Wren stepped forward. "I am Vec." Tora joined him. "And I am Tauran." The holograms scanned them, then nodded in satisfaction. Guardian protocols accepted. Initiating historical record playback. The chamber darkened, then filled with swirling images, stars, planets, ships. A story unfolded before them, told in light and shadow. Long ago, the Vec and Tauran had been allies, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Together, they had detected a terrible threat approaching, a swarm of energy-draining entities from beyond the galactic rim. To protect all life in the galaxy, they built the Nexus Shield, a vast energy field that could repel the invaders. The station they now stood in was its control center. The shield was completed, the hologram narrated, but disagreement arose over its use. The images showed arguments, anger building between the former allies. The Tauran wished to activate the shield immediately. The Vec insisted on more testing, fearing it might harm developing worlds within the galaxy. In the midst of this dispute, something went terribly wrong. A saboteur, identity unknown, damaged the main control systems. In the chaos that followed, each side blamed the other. The first shots were fired. The alliance shattered. The Guardians abandoned their posts. The hologram continued. The shield was never activated. The threat was forgotten. Only the war remained. The images faded, leaving the crew in stunned silence. Jack looked around at his companions, Vec, Tauran, and neutral species alike, all processing the truth that had been hidden for centuries. 500 years of war, he said quietly, started by a misunderstanding and a single act of sabotage. But who was the saboteur? Asked Tora, her voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the station shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed throughout the chamber. Multiple ships approaching, reported Bryn, checking his portable scanner. Vec and Tauran battle fleets. They've followed us here. Jack's expression hardened. Then we're out of time. We need to reactivate this station and show them the truth before they destroy it and start another 500 years of war. Alarms blared throughout the ancient station as Jack Reed raced from console to console, wiping away centuries of dust. The holographic figures of the Vec and Tauran Guardians watched impassively. How do we reactivate the main systems? Jack demanded. Full activation requires authorized Guardians to input the command sequence, the holograms replied in unison. Ren and Tora exchanged looks. We are not the original Guardians, Tora said. We don't know the sequence. The station shuddered as the first weapons fire struck its outer shields. On a monitor, they could see dozens of ships, both Vec and Tauran, moving into attack positions. They think we're trying to use this place as a weapon, Bryn said, monitoring communications. Both sides are claiming the station for themselves. Neither will listen. Jack slammed his fist on a console in frustration. Then he paused, an idea forming. The station recognized you two as Guardians, he said, pointing to Ren and Tora. What if we don't need to fully activate it? What if we just need to use the communication systems? The holographic Guardians tilted their heads. Communication systems require only basic Guardian authorization. Would you like to activate them? Yes. All the crew members shouted at once. Ren and Tora were directed to place their hands on two glowing panels. The station hummed to life around them, lights flickering on in sequence down corridors that hadn't seen life in centuries. Communications active, announced the holograms. What message shall be transmitted? Jack looked at his crew. We need to split up. Mara and Bryn, stay here and prepare the historical records for broadcast. Ren, you need to contact the Vec fleet. Tora, you need to reach the Tauran ships. They won't listen to us, Tora argued. We're considered traitors for working with the enemy. Make them listen, Jack said firmly. Their futures depend on it. And I need to get to the main control center. What are you going to do? Asked Ren. Jack's expression was determined, something that should have been done 5 centuries ago. The station was vast, its corridors stretching for miles in all directions. Jack followed the guidance of the station's AI, running through sections where emergency lighting cast eerie shadows. Behind him, he could hear the distant booms as weapons fire tested the station's ancient shields. They wouldn't hold for long. Where is the main control center? Jack gasped as he ran. Level 7. Section Alpha. The AI's voice responded from hidden speakers. The shield control room. When Jack finally reached it, he stopped in awe. The room was a perfect sphere, with a suspended platform at its center. All around, the walls displayed a real-time view of space, showing the Vec and Tauran fleets exchanging fire while they also attacked the station. So much hatred, Jack whispered. So many lives lost. He stepped onto the platform, which immediately lit up with controls. At the center stood a simple pedestal with a handprint scanner. This station is capable of more than communication, the AI informed him. The Nexus shield was designed to protect. It can still serve that purpose. Jack placed his hand on the scanner. To his surprise, it accepted his human print. Species unknown, the AI announced, but intention recognized. Activating emergency protocols. Energy surged through the station. The sphere around Jack transformed, showing the spiral pattern of the war he had discovered. But now he could see it wasn't just a pattern of battles. It was a key, a code that had been written across the stars themselves over centuries of conflict. The war was the key, Jack realized with astonishment. Each battle, each movement of fleets, was unknowingly completing a pattern that would reactivate the shield. Outside, the Vec and Tauren fleets suddenly found themselves unable to fire their weapons. A soft, golden field expanded from the station, enveloping ship after ship. "What have you done?" demanded the AI. Jack smiled grimly. "Created a no-fire zone. The same technology that was meant to shield the galaxy can be used to prevent weapons from functioning." On their respective bridges, Commander Dorn and Admiral Thol raged as their weapon systems went offline. Their fleets drifted helplessly, locked together in an enforced peace. Meanwhile, Ren and Tora had reached communication centers and were broadcasting the historical records to their peoples. For the first time in 5 centuries, both Vec and Tauren were hearing the true story of their shared past. And at the heart of the station, Jack Reed, a human who had been in space for less than a decade, had accomplished what countless diplomats and warriors could not. "Broadcast on all frequencies," Jack commanded. "It's time for everyone to hear the truth." Silence filled the vast command chambers of both the Vec and Tauren flagships. Crews stood frozen at their stations, staring at screens that displayed the same historical records. 5 centuries of hatred were being challenged by the truth of their shared past. Commander Dorn of the Vec sat rigidly in his command chair, his pale skin almost white with shock. Across space, Admiral Thol of the Tauren gripped the arms of his seat until his knuckles turned the color of ash. "It cannot be true," Thol whispered, but the evidence before him was undeniable. On the station, Jack Reed watched as his plan unfolded. The no-fire zone continued to expand, encircling more ships from both fleets. Neither side could attack, but more importantly, both were receiving the broadcasts prepared by Mara and Bryn. Complete historical records showing the original alliance, the building of the Nexus shield, and the tragic misunderstanding that had sparked centuries of war. "They're requesting to speak with us," Bryn announced, his voice filled with wonder. "Both commanders, at the same time." Jack nodded, straightening his simple Earth uniform. "Put them through." The main screen split, showing both Commander Dorn and Admiral Thol. For the first time in 500 years, leaders of the Vec and Tauren faced each other without gunfire. "Is what we're seeing real?" demanded Dorn, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "It is," Jack confirmed. "Your own people can verify the records. This station contains complete archives from before the war." "Why should we believe you?" Thol growled, but his usual fire was dimmed by uncertainty. "Because you already knew something was wrong," Jack replied simply. "Both your civilizations have been fighting your way back to this place for centuries. Deep down, you remembered what was lost here." Silence followed his words. Then, to everyone's surprise, a tear slid down Commander Dorn's pale cheek, the first public display of emotion from a Vec High Commander in living memory. 500 years, he said quietly. Millions of lives, countless worlds scorched, all because of a misunderstanding. "And a saboteur," Admiral Thol added sharply. "Someone deliberately set our peoples against each other." Jack nodded. "The station's records show that much, but not who was responsible." "Does it matter now?" asked Ren, stepping into view beside Jack. "The damage was done centuries ago. What matters is what we do today." Tora joined them, standing shoulder to shoulder with her former enemy. "We have a choice to make. continue a war based on lies, or rebuild what our ancestors started together. The commanders looked at each other across the vast distance of space and centuries of hatred. "I propose a ceasefire," Dorn said suddenly. "Effective immediately." Thull's scaled face showed conflict, centuries of military training warring with the truth before him. Finally, he nodded. "Agreed. All Tauren ships will stand down." A cheer erupted on the station's bridge. Jack allowed himself a small smile, but knew their work was just beginning. 3 days later, the leaders of both civilizations met in person aboard the ancient station. Jack watched from nearby as Commander Dorn and Admiral Thull cautiously approached each other in the Great Hall. Their seconds stood ready, hands near weapons despite the agreement. "In the name of the Vec Protectorate," Dorn said formally, "I extend the hand of peace." Thull straightened to his full height. "In the name of the Tauren Empire, I accept." Their handshake was brief, formal, and the most significant event the galaxy had seen in 5 centuries. Jack was called forward to witness the signing of what would later be known as the Reed Accord. As he watched the leaders press their marks to the document, he thought of how unlikely his success had been. A single human from a young spacefaring race, ending a war that had raged since his ancestors were building their first steam engines. "What happens now?" asked Mara, as the ceremony concluded. Jack looked out through the station's viewport at the combined fleet. Vec and Tauren ships, now positioned side by side, rather than in battle formation. "Now comes the hard part," he said. "Rebuilding trust. Reconstructing worlds. Learning to work together again." Ren approached, now wearing the formal insignia of a Vec diplomat rather than an engineer. "And the original purpose of the Nexus shield. The threat it was built to counter." Jack nodded seriously. "That's our next challenge. The records indicate the threat is still out there, still approaching. That's why this piece is so important. Your peoples built this shield together once. Now you'll need to finish what your ancestors started." As the formal reception began, Jack stood back, watching as Vec and Tauren cautiously began to mingle, centuries of conditioning slowly giving way to curiosity and shared purpose. Admiral Thull approached him, offering a glass of blue liquid. "The Galactic Council was wise to send you, human. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what those too close to a problem cannot." Jack accepted the drink with a smile. Or perhaps it takes someone too stubborn to accept that some conflicts can't be resolved. Commander Dorn joined them. "The human quality of hope," he observed. "A trait our peoples had forgotten." "A trait worth remembering," Jack replied, raising his glass. "To peace, and to facing the future together." Around them, the ancient station hummed back to life, ready to fulfill its original purpose at last.